worship leader, worship musician, sound tech, teacher, mother, father. These are all titles of a role that we may fill, but it is not the only thing that we are. Today on Worship Leader Pod, I sit down with a great friend of mine, Brian Kops, and we talk about how we are more than our title. Brian, who is a very gifted drummer, gives practical and spiritual application from his new book, More Than a Drummer, that will encourage and inspire you to live fully and not just your title that you carry, but in the identity you have in Christ. So come, join the conversation, open your heart, and prepare for God to meet you wherever you are. Let's dive in. I have an amazing guest with us here today, and his name is Brian Kops. Welcome.
Hey.
Woo. So Brian and I go way back, like
way back.
Yeah.
Long time.
I mean, how many years have we been friends? It's a long time.
15?
Yeah.
More than 15.
More than 15, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep, 15 or so.
Yeah.
But we became friends because we were in a band, a Christian band, and we traveled and sang and did all kinds of things, and it was cool.
All the shenanigans that go with it.
My gosh. So many late nights just laughing until my belly hurt because Brian is hilarious. You're like literally one of the funniest people that I know. And that was not like a knock. That's actually a good thing.
Oh, but, okay. That's good.
But so I knew Brian before he met his beautiful wife, Chelsea. And when they started dating and they got married, and it's just really cool to see how God's worked in Brian's life. And so Brian and his beautiful wife live in Costa Mesa in California. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to dive into the conversation because he's had so many different elements of music, leading worship, producing, all the different things. And I'm excited to jump into that, but I just want to hype him up a little bit more. So him and his wife, right. They live in Costa Mesa, California, and they serve at Dwelling Place Church, where they get to serve alongside Jeremy Riddle, and Brian gets to travel. And I didn't even say anything about him, but he's an incredible drummer. Like, just great. Like, literally probably he's going to say, but for real.
Thank you.
One of the greatest drummers I know. And I think and I always tell him, I go, if I ever were to travel like full time anywhere, you're my drummer, like hands down.
Let's go.
And if it's not you, then you need to lay hands on somebody else to impart exactly what you have to them. But he's an amazing drummer, travels and tours, and he's done such a wide variety of different elements of music. And so I'm excited to jump into this conversation. And really the conversation, the title that I had to kind of a spin off of the book that he just wrote. So excited. It's so good. It's called More Than a Drummer, Unlocking the More God Placed in You. And so I took that title a little bit just to segue into it, because we're going to talk about basically unlocking the more that God is in you. Like, you're not just a worship leader, you're not just a singer, you're not just a mom, you're not just this.
Right.
God has more inside of you, and we're going to chat about that. Yeah. So I'm excited.
Amazing.
Do you have anything to say? Do you want to add anything? I don't know.
I'm just so honored to be here. Yeah. You asked me to come and talk about this, and it's something that we're both deeply passionate about. Yeah. And have been for a long time. Yep. And you and Nate as well. Like, we all talk about this stuff. Yeah. So the fact that we're here and setting time aside to talk about, like, how do we experience more intimacy with our Heavenly Father? There's this thing of worship that we love, and it's great and it's cool. Like, what's going on? Like, what looking under the hood for those who are actively engaging in it? Like, what is going on? Yeah. So I'm just honored to be here. Yeah. Talk about it.
Man. And the honor's ours as well, because it's going to be an amazing conversation. And we already talked about this, but this is basically like, when we hang out, this is basically what we do. So this is just like, you guys are just hanging out with us, really, is what's happening.
We just have mics this time.
We just have mics this time. Yeah. And so I'm super excited. What I love to jump into is the book that you wrote. I kind of want you to give us a little bit of the why, but just the heartbeat behind the book, and like what made you write it, and all of the things.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, as you said, it's called More Than a Drummer, Unlocking the More God Placed in You. And I wanted to write something that explored heart of worship.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about things like purity. I want to talk about things like consecration, devotion. I want to what does that look like?
Yeah.
And then how do I grow in my creative skill set of playing the drums?
Yep.
So this is called More Than a Drummer, obviously. So it's geared, it does get into the drumming weeds, which I love. I'm a drum nerd, so I love talking about, all that stuff. But it could essentially, you could take the idea of how do we pursue holiness and grow in a creative skill set.
Good.
And so it's kind of a model. My dream is that there would be more than a bass player, more than a worship leader, more than a chef, more than a pilot, more than whatever.
Yeah.
It could be anything. How do we pair holiness with growing in that creative skill set? So what I know, what I love, my first love is the drums musically.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where I can express myself the most.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to start here.
So,
it's been great to do other things, and that's fun. We can get into all that.
Yeah.
But my home base is I always come back to the drums.
Yeah.
It's like my heart.
Yeah.
So that's what this is. It's just an exploration of how do I truly honor God with my gift.
Yeah.
How do I honor God first with my life?
Yeah.
And then the gifting, honoring Him with our gifts follow.
Yes.
Honoring Him with our lives.
That's really good.
It's not honoring Him with our gifts leads to honoring Him with our lives. It's it has to be in the right order.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and that's really good because it's like it can get muddy if we do those out of order, and it's easy to mix those up too.
Yes.
Like the gifting coming before the holiness, the purity, the consecration, like all of those things.
Yes.
And especially when you're in it for so long. And I know that you've played drums, I mean, since I've known you, but then also probably beyond that. Tell me a little bit about your journey getting into playing drums and just music in general, and that journey of realizing hey, it's beyond just playing the drums at a church on a Sunday.
Yes.
It's beyond that.
Right.
And kind of walk us through that.
Man, such a good question. So my mom is a piano teacher, so she started teaching me piano, and we've talked about this.
Yeah.
But, for those we're just meeting.
Yeah.
So she taught me piano, and then I took piano lessons for a few years. We went to a church that was only piano and organ. But then when I was 10, we moved to a new church, and it was Rock Band church.
Whoa.
And I was like, wait a minute. What is
Hold
this?
the phone.
Yeah. And so we went to this outdoor concert, and it was the drummer did this trash can drum solo ending, and 10-year-old me is mind blown. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. And so from there, I just became a sponge of everything. I fell in love with the drums. And then years later, I went to a Promise Keepers with it was a group from church in Detroit.
Nice.
And I remember they did an altar call, and my dad was like, do you want to go? My dad was standing next to me. He's like, you want to go up? I was like, yeah, sure. I'm 14, 15, so we go up, and I said the prayer, and I accepted Jesus into my heart, and I didn't really know what that meant.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew what it meant, but I didn't know what that meant, in terms of trajectory, where things are going to go.
Right.
And then I remember when I was 16, one night, I just felt like God, I was laying in my bed, and I just felt like God was call out to me. And I was like, okay, I just knew that it was Him. Yeah. I was like, Lord, you're so good. You're amazing. This is weird. I feel, it's such a, at first it's just you don't really know what you're doing. You're just this is just what I need to be doing. And so from there, I mean, it took so long to blend, because I was so obsessed with the drums. I wanted to be a famous drummer. I read all the magazines. I wanted to be on this and that and whatever. But I always, God always sent people into my life to remind me of like, hey, you're good, but it's unto something. It's not unto me, it's unto something else. And so different voices in my life encouraging me along the way was just, that was a lifeline for trajectory for me. So yeah, from there it's just like, okay, Lord, I remember I used to ask, like, make me the best drummer ever, and it's, in one hand, it's like God probably just smiles.
Yeah.
It's like, because I do believe we can hear from him, and I do believe musically we can grow in the skill of listening.
Yes.
Like we can listen spiritually on an instrument.
Yeah.
Like we can grow in that. And I believe when we ask God for that, he does answer that prayer.
Yeah.
Just my motivation was like, I want to be the sickest drummer ever. I wasn't really thinking of like, Lord, I want to honor you with this. But it wasn't until I was playing and a pastor came over and just started praying over me. And he said, you're more than a drummer. And I was like, I don't know what that means.
You're like, cool.
Yeah. Does that mean I need to start practicing the bass? Or,
do something different?
What do I do?
Yeah.
And so that trajectory took years to discover as well. I'm trying to give like a condensed-ish version of everything.
Go for it. It's good.
So what I did was I was like, okay, well, I'm in school for psychology. Let me go I finished my degree there, and I was like, well, I'll go and get my master's in counseling, because there were some words around like counseling and one-on-one and this kind of a thing. So I was like, okay, I'll go get my master's in counseling. I enrolled in school and I did a year there, and it was great. I loved it. But when Chelsea and I were getting married, we had a meeting with the guy who was going to make our cupcakes. And we went into his shop, and it was honestly a shop like the size of this room. And he had awards and magazine write-ups and everything all around everything. And I was like, man, you really love this.
Yeah.
It's like, I was like, how did you get into this? And he's like, well, I was a therapist, and I had all my patients, and one day I went home and I turned on a cooking show, and they're just baking. And I was like, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
So he was like, I quit everything. I sold the practice, and now I run the shop.
Wow.
So I was in the middle of school for counseling at that time. So I was like, that's what I want to do. I was like, I like that. I want to play the drums, And so.
Oh, I thought you meant to make cupcakes.
Sorry. Yeah. So
I was like, that sounds good too.
I actually have a baking business on the side. No, that's not true. It's not true. Although I did make a chocolate souffle.
Is it good? Was it good?
Amazing. And it was one and done. Now I'm retired because I nailed it. And it's like one of the hardest things to make.
It sounds hard.
Yeah, it was hard. It was a total, like, I don't know why it worked, honestly, but
it was a God thing.
Yeah, it was. Anyways, I digress.
That's okay. I love it.
So
now I want to try it.
I know.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I retired, so we'll have to try someone else's.
Okay. Well, I'll just have to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's when I just decided, like, Lord, I'm going to go all in, and I don't know what it's going to look like. And I felt like God was calling me into taking, I don't want to put it in a way that people like will put pressure on themselves, but I guess just where my journey was, I felt like God was like, I'm calling you into taking what I put on your life seriously.
Yeah.
And like what I put in you, I want to draw it out of you.
Yeah.
And one way to do that is by just surrendering it all to him. Like that's the only way.
It is
just surrendering. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pursue just being a musician, playing. But I'm not on tour anywhere. I don't teach right now. It was almost like I just went and quit all my classes, and it's like, now what?
Yeah.
And some days it still feels like that. It's like it's not like there's an arrival point that I've experienced. Maybe some people get there, but
I mean, your Facebook like profile picture is pretty epic. It looks like you've made it.
Oh, I should change that then.
I'm just kidding. He's so nervous. He actually really hates that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's such a cool picture though.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. That's my Apple contact too. So
okay.
It just whenever I call somebody, it's like it's too much.
It's too much.
It's too much. It's like really cool, but it's like
it's really cool.
Yeah, I need to dial it back for sure. My gosh. But anyways, so yeah, I guess that's all leading to the point of the only way forward is surrender.
Good.
That's if you feel like God placed something in your heart, give it to him.
That's so good.
Because he's the only one who will draw it out of you, like what he put in you. And so there's no situation, there's no band, there's no musician, there's no church, there's no environments can pull us in different ways and like bring things out of us, which is awesome. But just constantly surrendering like our gifts to him. And like no matter where we go, it's like, Lord, this is yours. How can I serve what you've given me,
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, that's the only way to see fruit with anything.
So. That's very true. Because when you withhold that surrender, then it becomes almost like an idol, because it's something that you think you can do, and you can and those situations can happen without, it can slip up, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. But and I find this even in my personal life that I like today, I was like, God, I want to live the life of surrender every single day. Like,
wow.
Even like starting this podcast, so it's like, this is awesome. And God's really like put it in the desire in my heart to do it and lead me to do it. But I'm like, Lord, even in the excitement with him providing the things that I need to get this rolling, I'm still surrendering this. This is not mine.
Right.
And I think sometimes, even in the culture, sometimes with me, even I will just say, like, being a worship leader, you almost forget to like resurrender the gift.
Totally.
Because there was one point in your life where, that gift to be a worship leader, a drummer, a singer was like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Thanks, Lord. Like I'm honored. And maybe, and you'll probably touch on this, just like even what you said about like, oh, I guess I love drumming. I guess I'll just like go and do that. And then, continue to live that life of surrender and doing that. And that really, that is what God longs for, because that's how our faith, we rely completely on him to do what he's going to do, to open doors, to close doors, all the things. But I'm a big advocate of surrendering, although it's not easy.
No, in fact, it's the hardest.
It's the hardest, but when you do it, it's better.
Every time.
It's better every time.
And it's never obvious. It's because we're always, so we want to know the next thing.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, A to B, it's always A to B.
Yeah.
But God does not work that way. He's like, I'm actually going to take you A, and then I'm going to take you a side way to L.
Yes.
Or M or whatever.
Yep.
And you're trying to get to B. I'm trying to either skip steps, or I'm trying to take you back, because that's I don't, it's tough to talk about in an encouraging way, because it's like some things are just so hard to walk through. Some things are so hard to give up. And I think what you touched on was like, things can become an idol.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, I think we have to actively like when the Bible says, search my heart and know me. Psalm 139.
Yeah.
23 and 24.
That's impressive. Well, I would have just said Psalms.
Fact check me,
Okay.
like the address.
Yes.
But it's, search my heart, find any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
Yes.
It's like, that's a really hard prayer.
Yeah.
And we have desires and we have things that we want to do and accomplish. And it's like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to do this and I want to do that. And it's like, surrender is the only thing that will bring fruit. Because we can build things on our own. We can build things apart from God. We can get good at things.
Yeah.
It's like getting good at something isn't, I mean, it's hard to do that. But what we're after is fruit. Yes. What we're after is, I want what I do to have an impact. Like, I want it to have an impact on the kingdom. Like, I want to partner with what God is doing.
100%.
And so if I just want to build my empire and say, God, can you bless that? That doesn't work that way. It's like, you have to surrender at every level that you go. And so it's actually a good practice.
Yeah.
Like, okay, where are my idols in my life?
Yeah.
And actively like search them out. Like, Lord, show me where my idols are. What am I placing in front of you? Yeah. And it's like repentance. Like, just, man, we could go anywhere, but it's true, and some people, you see their life and it's like everything works out for them. Why why is it so hard for me? Everything works out for them. But it's, you just don't know what God has led people through, or what people, you just don't know what God is going to do in their lives, or is doing in their life, or whatever it may be. So, man, there's so many places.
And as we move on, but also to touch base on, in situations where, you say, okay, I thought it was going to go from A to B to C to D to E. And Lord's like going here, here, and here. And I was actually just reading a book about humility, but it was talking about how, like, when we expect the A, B, C, D, E route, we almost basically lose the effect to see God in the midst. Yeah. Because it's so like, well, I know it's going to happen like this. And again, that becomes prideful because you're saying, I know the way, and God doesn't. So when God decides to change it up and loosen it up and, oh, I thought I'd be writing music by now, or I thought I'd be X, Y, and Z by now. And God's like, but I don't want you to miss me in the process. Right. I know what's better and best for you. And even that, it's just like, you become so like, in awe, like, God, you just want to be with us. You just want a relationship with us. You don't want us just to go through life just doing the things. You want us to intimately and personally be in a relationship with you. And he talks to us, because in those moments where it is kind of crazy, and you get to a moment in your life, and I know you've probably experienced this many times, where things shifted in your life, or, things didn't look the way that you did. What are you doing then? You're, God, where are you? I need you. Oh, and man. that conversation may have not happened if you just had everything together. Oh,
Yes. So it's a baptism. It's like baptism by fire. Like, Lord, burn off of me what is in the way of me seeing your goodness, or where you're leading, or like whatever, wherever that spiritual fog is. Like, burn it off, and it's worth it. And if that means I have to take a couple steps back, it's like a few steps back now might be, I talk about this a little bit in the book. It's like, it might be leaps forward in God. So in the natural, I'm like, oh, I don't want to get rid of that. I can't give that up right now. And it's not about like, what are you giving up? It's like, I will do anything to gain more of him. You know, it's so like, good. You get to that. I think that's what repentance is. It's like, you're kind of at that stage of, what's it called? It's just like, you're at the point of like, I can't think of the word. That's and I don't want to just start guessing the words, but you just kind of have, I don't want to say no mercy, but you're taking it very seriously. Like, Lord, I want your life for me. So sign me up. Where do I go?
And how do you like maintain that through, like, I just think about, because I personally know you, I know you've gone through, like, you've been in so many different elements, like music wise, worship wise, but like seasons wise, like having, like, as soon as you and Chelsea got married, you guys like started a band, you guys were like singing, she was writing music, and then you guys moved across the country, and there's even that's a story. And then you move to a place you don't really love, and it's kind of crazy. And then you trying to find community and trying to find church, and you're here, and it's like, how do you continue to remain in that like surrender, or just like, God, like, trusting him, and just like what you're talking about.
That's such a good question. I don't, honestly, I think for me, it's been seasonal. Yeah. There are some seasons where I have a really good pulse on like, Lord, we're locked in. Yeah. We're like, this is awesome. There are some seasons where it's like not that way at all. And so there were definitely some moments and there still are moments of just like, Lord, this is not working. Yeah. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't hear you. Yeah. I'm very frustrated. I don't have any sense, so it's a relationship. Yeah. It's like a marriage, it's like there's, one of the best ways to grow in your marriage is just getting good at communicating to each other. It doesn't necessarily mean everything's going to work out. Right. You're just figuring out how to talk to each other. And I think, our walk with God is so similar. It's like some days I have a sense of your nature and I am so in love with you. And some days I'm just like, all right, I'm just going off of past equity of walking with the Lord because it's not working today, you know? And some people might be different, but just for me, it has to be honest. Yeah. So I don't know. I hope that. Yeah. No, it's good. I just wanted to see where because in every season, like you're saying, it is different. And like how we continue to remain steadfast and surrendering to the Lord. And I think it's just all about recognizing that like, oh, even the moments where like, God, where are you? Then you start like getting worried, like, okay, God, no, for real, where are you? But then you press in and you don't, hide or go away. You press into the Lord and his voice and just like the relationship aspect of that. And I know every season does definitely look different. And especially like when you are kind of like busy, and maybe we'll talk about this because when you get busy with like music stuff and like rehearsals or, late nights in the studio or like different things like that, like even in those moments, you can still be surrendered in those without, I guess like throwing the, baby out, just like knowing that everything that you're doing is a conversation with the Lord and is surrendering to the Lord as well. But I thought I was going somewhere else with that, but I can't remember. So that's okay. No, it's great. It's good.
But that's kind of my thought.
Yeah. I think it's the through line is like God, you are faithful. Lord, you are faithful. You are kind. You're so good. Yeah. Like if at the end of the day, if you need anything, it's like, Lord, you're good. I have no words. We were created to worship. Right. If it's like, for those who don't cry out, the rocks will cry out. Right. Yeah. So I don't need a rock crying out on my behalf. No, not today. Not today. And so it's like, Lord, you're good. I love you. And even if things don't make sense, and there are true hardships, there are true difficulties that people walk through. We lose loved ones. We get diagnoses. There are things that are just so brutal to walk through. And that's why I think we're so relational as well, because that's when it's like, you have people around that can help you through it. It is an individual relationship with him, but it's also a relationship with each other. Yeah. And just being rooted in a community and just keeping our eyes on him, like, Lord, you're faithful. Lord, you're good. Yeah. I don't understand anything that's happening, but you're faithful. Yeah. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. I love that. I have another question for you. Okay. I have a lot of questions, but I'm trying to figure out which we're going to go. But I really want to tap into the how of like, and you can touch base on this in the context of your book and your personal experience of like what you did or things that you experienced to help you unlock the more of God inside of you. Yeah. Because I even think about, there's a part in the book where you were talking about how you felt like, well, there's tons of other drummers that are way better than me. Like, just let them do it. Yeah. Like, I don't really matter. It's not, me adding, I can, and you can say that about anybody, like worship leader, like, totally. If you're new, you want to be a worship leader and you're like, well, there's enough worship leaders out there, what what would I add to it? And I know that a lot of that is just not knowing who you are. It's just a lack of identity. But like, how do we overcome that as creatives and worship leaders and musicians and singers to then, because the reason why we kind of go through these patches is to also help other people into that. So maybe talk a little bit about like, what was it for you that helped you unlock that? And then just, any wisdom you have in that.
So such a good question. I think, a couple of things have happened, and I want to be careful here, because I'm not against song arrangements. I'm not against, hey, we're going to do this song this way. Everybody play it this part. Like when it comes to unifying a team, parts matter. Like it helps. It's like, hey, I practice this way. I heard your part this way. I heard your part this way. It's like it unifies everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is awesome. That's great. The danger with perfection, I'll say, the danger with simply executing is that there's no creativity involved. And so when there's a situation of like, oh, man, so-and-so's so amazing. A lot of times it's because there's an environment where they've been allowed to be creative and make stuff up on the spot. It's like a playroom where there are no rules and there's paint and there's walls and you can just, and so I always encourage anybody, drummers, any musicians, whatever you do, like put yourself in an environment where there are no rules. Good. There's no BPM. There's no groove. There, whatever. Just play your instrument. It's almost like a form of like you're improvising by yourself. And it feels so weird at first because it's like, well, I'm better when I'm playing with the song. It's like we all are. Like that's like it's gonna work. Like playing the song is going to work. But it's not enforcing like the creative muscle. And I think God has placed a unique sound in everybody. And we can invite him into the process. And I think this is linked to purity as well.
Good.
I think pursuing holiness, like just tuning our souls to him is like, that's what we were talking about earlier. That's step one.
Right.
Now, step two, I want to be an awesome drummer. That's great. Just don't flip it. And so like you can just kind of listen spiritually. There's creativity that happens. There are things that are like, I would have never thought of this, or I felt like God was playing through me, or, so many great worship moments where that happens. And a lot of times it's because you've been able to throw the playbook out a little bit.
Yes.
Not only individually, but the whole team. And so sometimes it's just in the overall culture. And that's why I said I want to be careful, because it's like, it's okay. Like if you have one acoustic guitar player, a bass player, and a singer and tracks, that's fine. That's okay. It's, some environments, it's like, we just don't, we can't do that. That's fine. But what are ways that you can, if you're home by yourself playing, what are ways you can start infusing ideas into your playing? And it's baby steps. And so when you look at somebody like so-and-so who's, oh, I want to be like that, there's probably been a lot of opportunity to be creative and just a lot of situations, trial by fire, which I've had so many of those where it's like, okay, I need to make a decision right now. It's going to fall off a cliff musically if I make the wrong one. That's a healthy pressure. That's okay.
It is.
Not for everybody. It's like work into it. That's why arranged songs are fine. But when you start getting into, especially in spontaneous land, it's like when the playbook goes out the window. We now need to all agree on like where we're gonna go and what we're gonna do. And I think just a general interest in Oh, this is such a big question. I'm sorry.
No, you're doing great.
I'm trying to land it. But for me personally, I just love playing the drums. I love when a kick pattern is a 16th note over from like another way of doing, you know what I mean? It's like, I just love that stuff.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's driven a lot of just exploration.
Yeah.
And another thought I've been having recently is that excellence is exploration.
Oh.
Like when we talk about excellence, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, it's good.
I think it's just approaching things with an exploring mindset. It's like a curious mindset.
Yeah.
So if you come in and it's like, hey, I want to try this, and then someone else is like, no, we're not doing that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, let's try it.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't work, great. We'll go back to the other. You know, it's like, we're not doing brain surgery.
Right.
We're not landing planes. My sister's an air traffic controller. And so
awesome.
there are like, 300-400 people in the sky that she's like responsible for landing safely. And that to me is stressful.
Yeah, that sounds stressful.
Messing up a drum fill in front of some people, like that's embarrassing, but nobody like there are no there's no consequences for that. Right. And so I think just taking the seriousness out of it. It's like worship isn't a bar to be met.
Good.
It's an expression to be made.
Yes.
And that's what we get to do.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like that's the freedom of the Lord.
Yes.
That's like everything you're saying is just like it was for freedom that we were set free. Yeah. Like that's kind of the whole point. And so when you can go into a rehearsal, and I've done this many times, I said, we're just gonna rest here.
Yes.
We're just gonna go.
Yeah.
I don't know where this is gonna go. And we get our feet wet, and then all of a sudden people are like, okay.
Yes.
And really going off script is my favorite because it's like, it heightens your faith. Because like, okay, God,
here we go.
It's on you. Like, you know what I mean? Like here we go. Like, help me out,
Totally.
But then it also creates unity within the team because then it's like, I'm taking a step to go out into freedom.
Yeah.
And I'm calling everyone else to do the same.
Yeah.
And it's timid and you can tell when people are like, I'm not really sure this is not on the chord chart, or whatever. But then it's like, then they step into it and then there's this freedom and then it overflows to the room. And then all of a sudden you're in freedom.
Yeah.
And
so
like
good.
there's a beautifulness to that when you can cultivate that in rehearsal. And I used to have a keyboard player that used to always say, well, I practice the song, but I also practice the presence in the song. So it's like you're practicing at home, just like what you said, just play, just go. And when you don't create space to just do that, then it's easy to get like super rigid. And then you're not really like stepping into the more that God has. You're just kind of like, you're holding tight to what you know, instead of just going for it, and then, that then could stifle the team. And then, so on. There's like an effect.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
100%. Yeah. Because you kind of feel that. You can feel the tenseness of I'm trying to nail these parts.
Yeah.
And take it seriously, all that stuff.
Of course.
That's preparation.
Yeah.
To me, that's preparation. Like if you're listening to songs on the way to service, granted, okay, sure, you have some weeks that are
sometimes it happens.
It happens.
Sure.
Totally happens. If there's a pattern.
Right.
If it's like, hey, every time you're here, you don't know like what the plan is. You don't know the songs. You don't, you're not really paying attention.
Yep.
That's like, well, maybe we talk about why you're here, because it's like, this is such an opportunity for us to come into the house of the Lord.
Shoot.
This is like, we get to bring our gifts. And actually, okay, this is, it's Psalm time.
Psalm time.
I thought I might talk about this. I have not made it through this verse without crying.
Okay. Do you want me to get some tissues?
No, I'll be fine.
Okay.
I'll be all right. Well, I might well up, but I'll be all right. I'll make it. So this is Psalm 84. Okay. Here we go. Yeah. Verse 10 and 11. I'll just do 12. It's short too.
Great.
For a day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness.
Yeah.
For the Lord God is a sun and shield. Mm. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those who walk uprightly.
Wow.
O Lord of hosts, blessed is the one who trusts in you. Man, one day I'll get through it. But the part that really has just been wrecking me is I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked.
Yeah.
You know, and we talk about like worship and just doing the thing, being on stage, and how do we be more awesome? And that's great. I love all of that. But it's like just the posture is like, Lord, I would rather be here. I'd rather just stand at the door.
Yeah.
Like I just want to be here. Yeah. I just want to be in your presence. Yes. Anything beyond that is a bonus.
Yeah.
If I get to play drums here,
Mm-hmm.
Does it get any better? Mm-hmm. If I get to lead worship here in your house, me, you know, it's like that level of humility is like, I think that's how we honor him. It's like, Lord, I want to revere your house. Mm-hmm. And if I get to bring my gifts here, like how humbling is that, you know?
Yeah. And it really ties into this, like this image of like bringing something to God. Like we can bring something to God that he will smile upon, that he will welcome. Like I have something to bring to him. And it, you know, it may even be, you know, me singing and my voice cracking, but guess what? Uh-huh. Like I'm bringing an offering to the Lord and he looks on that and he said, he'll stand and smell the incense, like that aroma, that offering. Like every time I lead worship, I just get so fired up because it's like, God, all these people are here to bring you something. And like, I would rather be just like you anywhere. Yeah. And even in my own home to be able to worship the Lord, to bring him something anywhere at any time is just like a mind blowing thing for me. And he's always like, excited he's like giddy. He's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Yes. I'm going to ride on the praises of my people. Yes. I'm going to show up. I'm going to walk in that room and I'm going to reveal myself to these people. Like there are revelations that God just continues to blow on the people of God and people who invite him to just come. And it just goes back, like what you're saying, to the purity of heart. Like I know that when I show up to a rehearsal and I'm coming in, I'm not just bringing this gift, this thing. It's before that. It's my heart. It's the purity of that. And I know, like even in the book, you touched on just like how like we are all bringing God this offering, and in rehearsal or practice time, that's really like preparing that offering to bring to the Lord. And I just like love that idea. Yeah, it like just gets me fired up.
Yeah. There's a verse in 1 Kings that I talk about. It's 1 Kings 6 and 7, and the whole premise I wanted to write about was like, I want to talk about how they built a temple. You know, it's like, it's going to be great. And then I read it, and it talks about how no tools, nothing was used at the site of the temple. Wow. I was like, oh, my entire thing was going to be like the building at the temple. Like it kind of crumbled everything that I wanted to talk about. So I was like, okay, start over. But then I read the part that said they dressed the blocks off site at the quarry. And so that's where they chiseled. That's where all the noisy construction took place, where they chiseled and smoothed and rounded blocks so that way they could bring them to the temple. Wow. Because they considered the temple like a reverent place. Yeah. So they didn't want like a noisy construction site. Yeah. And now the point of that is not like, okay, I can't make mistakes. It's not that at all. Yeah. It's like practicing off-site, preparing, bringing it. It's like I was like, I can't believe there's a verse on practice. Like
there it is. In Worship leaders, Kings, if you need it, there it is.
Yeah. 1 Kings 6 and 7. It's
all right.
Great.
Boom.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And because when you can practice off stage, then you can really go anywhere when you're leading too. There's more, that's where that freedom taps into. Because you know where you're going. And like, even for me, this is a big thing that I love, because as a worship leader, like one of my main people that I'm like locking with is my drummer.
Yes.
They're usually MDing too, but like my drummer, because I know, and I'll do this where like, I will tell my MD, like, this is what I'm feeling for the morning. This is where I want to go. This is the transition, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I trust that my drummer and my MD is practicing that, taking the blocks offsite, chisel, doing all things. So when we come together, we're just going in. And there's this like sweet banter almost of like, okay, I know where you're going, because we had a conversation and I practice off stage and I'm practicing the presence at home and all of that. But there's just something really powerful when you can come into a practice to not even maybe practice sometimes.
Right.
Like I've had it where I've just been like, we just worshiped for a while because we were just there and we just like went for it, and it was good. And God just really like, and I mean, we did practice, don't skip practice, but we went through the songs and things like that. But it was like the main thing was just to like come together. And there's that unity aspect that comes with practice too, that, you know, I just like love that.
You know, that's actually a great point. Like I would even encourage people to incorporate that. Like, you know, there are different service order environments. It's like, you know, some places it's like at 17 seconds, we hand the mic. You're like, okay, you know, that's your whatever. But even in like a rehearsal, like, hey, we have 5 minutes. Like, let's just float. I'm really feeling the bridge of this song. That's generally all those moments are, those moments that just take off and it's like epic and all this. It's generally just like, when we did the song and when we did verse 2, it honestly felt amazing. Like, let's just go back and see what happens. We don't have to stick to the arrangement or anything. Let's just explore. We're just all going to explore together. And it's, you know, it allows people worshiping, because generally God is in the room. He's not only speaking to people on stage.
Correct.
It's a royal priesthood. Right? Like we're all there. And it's not a stage thing of like, okay, we're going to watch the band play the karaoke these songs. Like that's not what it is. It's like we are the royal priesthood. We are all lifting our voices to him. And so the best times is when you don't even need the band anymore. Man. It's like, okay, you guys are singing. Cool. Go ahead. Like, you know, take it. And, I just think it you can't manufacture that moment. It's so sweet. It's so beautiful when it happens, but you have to get there sincerely. And like, just follow where God, like God is like, I want to lead you to where where I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about that a little bit. 'Cause I just, to steward those moments and because it's not like, well, I'm carrying the moment, I'm like making it. That's not it. It's like, how do we steward those moments, or like finding the river of God? I remember you telling me a while ago, you were leading or you're playing drums. Jeremy Riddle was leading, and he talks a lot about finding the river, like where's the heart of God in the set, and when and how to identify that. And I just like, I think even just to help worship leaders and singers and musicians who may feel like, what do I do when, you know, you do feel that, you know, God's moving, he's speaking. We're throwing the clock out the window. Like, what do we do, and how do we steward those moments? Especially for a drummer. I mean, really all the instruments, but the drummer does hold a lot of weight and carrying and stewarding what God's doing in the room.
Number one, be patient.
Good.
It's going to take 2 times longer than you think. And so like thinking, you know, it's always like, okay, for 4 bars, I'm going to do this. And then the next 4 bars, I'm going to do this. And the next 4 bars, like, just not thinking of, because when you feel momentum starting to build, the temptation is like, okay, now we're gonna arrive. We're gonna send this thing, and it's just gonna be like this epic big arrival. Don't assume that. Just like you might get to like 5. You know, I talk about dynamics a lot, like 1 through 10. You know, you might start at a 1, something happens, and like see how long you can go before arriving somewhere. Like how much can you, and there is a such thing as going too far, and it's not always cut and dry. But that's when you're listening. Spiritually, you're watching. You're watching the room. There are so many times I've been playing and my instinct is like, I want to do more, but what if I just waited another round? What if I just, and there's so many levels you can build in dynamically of like I like to, okay, I'm going to get in the drumming weeds for a second, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I love it.
So I think it's really important to create different dynamic levels, and just having a deeper understanding of your drum kit is crucial. So your kick drum is a sledgehammer. That thing, if you start busy on the kick, you have nowhere to go. And so with any build that you are in, or any like momentum that you feel like can happen, the longer you wait on the kick, I promise you, it's like when the kick comes in, it's gonna be like, oh
it's
shoot,
time.
We're going. We're going.
Absolutely.
And so if you bring it in too early, everybody feels like, everybody starts to feel like rushed. Okay, now we got to get somewhere. And this, it's not always cut and dry. It's not always simple. I've blown a lot of builds, so I've made some and I've blown some, it's like, I'm not done. So it's like, it's never easy. It just takes that sensitivity. And as a team too, like bass and drums, like if the bass player is following that same kind of rule of like, okay, let's wait. See how long we can stay out of this.
Because once the bass hits with the drums, that's it.
And like if kick and bass are together, like that's a drive. And now, you want to like slowly let the water rise. And then eventually you have, in the worship leader is, okay, here's another piece. I guess here's some advice for a worship leader who's like, what do I do in this moment?
Us. Yes.
Is you don't have to be able to play all the instruments, none of this, but an understanding, or at least an awareness of like, let's do an instrumental. Like, I'm going to step back. Like, we're doing this bridge. I'm just going to step back because there's like the guitarist is kind of just in the zone right now. And so I'm just going to let some momentum build. I don't need to repeat this bridge and repeat and repeat and repeat and then go like, just do the bridge. People get it. Like step back one time, let people sing it. Let the instruments take it for a minute and come back in. When you come back in, it's like band is sensitive. Like, okay, we're going to send it. Like just, you're exploring. That's all it is. And it's not, it's like I said, it's not cut and dry, but it's so helpful to have. That's when the whole team is like, everybody's watching. Like, what are you doing? You moved your leg differently. What does that mean?
Tell me now.
Tell me. Like,
everyone's eyes are just like a bunch of owls looking at each other.
Exactly. And like, you want to because you're feeling like you want to do a good job. You want to steward the moment well. And so it's not taking it too seriously, but having a great music director is game changer in those moments. So
absolutely.
A music director who's like, hold off on the snare, like easy on the kick, like stay warmer keys, not up there yet. No, we're not to octaves yet on the melody. Like just, everybody is kind of viewing their instrument dynamically. And that's how it's like, I guess from a technical standpoint, that's just how it works.
Absolutely.
And it's like, it's a ride and everybody takes it, and it feels natural, and it's like, it feels intentional.
Absolutely.
But any song that's longer than 6 minutes, I promise it was not intentional. It's not. Like they just fell into a groove and record was on. And it's awesome. That's not true. I'm sure there are songs longer than 6 minutes that are in.
Probably, for sure. I mean,
couple.
I can name a couple.
But
and really, like, even what you're saying, all I can think about, and this is something that I like am always telling my team, is like, we are all leading worship. There's not one worship leader. Like, I put the set together, sure, but guess what? I need you just as much to help me lead and steward the space, including sound. This is literally from front to back.
Front to back.
Like we are 100% all worship leaders.
Yes.
Everybody has a role. So just like what you're saying, it's like worship leaders, you have the same temptation to, oh, I was saying that part again, or you just have to say something. You have to keep saying, how about you just step back or just wait? Like I'm a big advocate for waiting.
Yes.
Like even to the point where you feel uncomfortable. It's like, wait till you even feel awkward. Not, I mean, you know, there's some ways to identify when it's like, okay, don't be ridiculous.
Yes.
But like to the point, like sometimes I'll just sit there and I'll just wait and I'll let the keys just take it. Drums is kind of like doing stuff. And I'll just wait. And the moment that I start feeling like, okay, go, I'll wait one more time. Just like what you said. I'm going to wait one more time.
Yes.
And then usually that one more time means, oh no, we're not going anywhere for a while because I then have entrusted the entire band to help me lead. And that's where that trust and that communication, like, I think like, and I'm thinking about, as you're talking, when we used to like play lead worship together, and I'd be like, in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait. Then I'll wait a minute and I'll wait another minute. And then you came in, like, you always come in right when you're supposed to. It's like, right, that needed to happen. But because I trusted you and you're also leading worship, it's not the Amber show. It's not the worship leader show. It's like we are all together doing this. Like, same with the keys and electric guitar and bass and sound, literally from front to back, everyone is leading. And I just like want to encourage to like worship leaders, like take the time to be okay with waiting. Like just take a moment to just, even if you're like, well, what do I say or what, just say, we're just going to sit here for a minute. God's doing something. Just, and I usually, sometimes I'll give them a time just in case people are wondering, 30 seconds. Right. You know, worship leaders, we don't really mean 30 seconds. We mean a full minute. You know, it's like, we're going to sit here and then you really feel the faith in the room because people are connected because they're disconnected from what's happening on stage and they're connected to the one that we are here for. And that's like the whole goal. Right.
100%. Yeah. That's so well put. Like everybody sharing the responsibility of like, we are here to listen and lean in and trust each other. And, you know, I think that's honestly, that's one of the biggest things that teams can do. What do we have to do to trust each other? If we walk into the building on a Sunday morning, it's like, nah, I'm not talking to him. What, you know, it's like, like, okay, go have the conversation of like, hey, are we good? You know, like what, and I know that's very complex thing, but that unity piece is going to be so felt, because the team has walked through that together. That's going to overflow, and people are going to feel that, you know, and it's just,
I mean, and side note, like if there's just unity on stage, the people can feel that. Like it God's going to move regardless. He's going to do his thing because that's what he does. But, and it's not about like, oh, do they feel that? It's just like, it creates this culture of like inconsistency too with like, okay, is everyone okay on there? And then it can be distracting too. So definitely like, you know, clear the air with people, you know, get your heart. It's all about the heart, right? It's just going back to purity, just like knowing why you're there and everything. And that it just makes a big difference. Unity on the team, conversating, doing, you know, even like worship leaders talking through the set with people and like letting them know so they feel they're on board and like all the different things. But oh my gosh, we could talk about that for hours. We have been. Because I'm just so passionate about unity on stage and creating just the space for God to move in a rehearsal and on, you know, when you're leading and for people to, because again, the whole point of what we do is to lead people to encounter Jesus. To encounter him. And without distraction, that's why we practice, so that we're not being a distraction. And unity so that we can really like go where, you know, God wants us to go. And the Bible says, you know, unity demands a blessing. Like that's where the anointing comes from. So it's like, let's do that.
Let's aim for that.